Hello, my name is Mariana Moreno-Gonzalez. I am a portrait artist painter. I specialize in animal portraits. And today I'm gonna kind of walk you through how I go about portrait painting. Um, I learned the grid system pretty early on. In one of my AP art classes in high school, we figured out how to grid an image, and it's been very helpful for me as I've gotten back into painting. I've been doing portrait painting now since 2021, so that's about 3 years of just dedicating to this craft. I have a very strong passion for the subjects. I love doing portrait paintings for people's beloved pets, and the skills that I develop with the practice I like to apply to larger pieces of other kinds of portrait painting, sort of like surrealist people paintings. So for this one, I sometimes will do solid backgrounds with a little floral detail, and for those in other paintings, and maybe in future paintings, I'll color block the area of the solid color. But for this one, I really love the original image, and I think it helped to ground the dog, and just fits the ratio of the painting very well. So this one's going to be a full portrait in that it's going to, I'm not going to do much editing of the original image, or adding my own style to the background. So I'm going to turn the camera towards the monitor, because I have a a monitor that I work with, and I've put in, they're probably difficult to see, but they're faint lines. I've gridded this image on Photoshop. I find Photoshop to be very easy for me to do, and I haven't found an iPad version that does a really good grid job. So if anyone knows of any, please let me know. But I do this on my computer, the Photoshop gridding, and so this is an 8 by 10 piece, 8 inches by 10 inches. So I will make the image in 8-inch by 10-inch, and then grid it, the halfway point and then the quarter points, vertically and horizontally. So since it's 8 by 10, they're going to be every 2 inches going across, and then 5 in between, 2.5, 2.5. And when I do the line work on my canvas, it's going to be the same. So that the calculations and proportions and everything are going to be the same, so I can trust my guided photo reference when I put this on the canvas. And I mean, it's been a very helpful tool from the beginning, where I just kind of work on it piece by piece, and I don't go grid by grid with the painting, but when I start my sketch, I'll look to see, like, where does the nose hit here, where does the mouth hit in this box, and where does the elbow hit in that box, what's the top of the forehead on that box. And we can see with my sketch here that it fills up the canvas, and it looks in proportion to my reference image. And it just takes the guesswork out of going back and forth, because I believe, like, set yourself up for success. So these sort of, the grid is a great system to take away the guesswork of where you're going to put your lines, your base work, because when you kind of have that figured out and you feel more confident with that, I feel like you can just play more with your material, and have more fun experimenting with the material itself, with the paint and the colors and all that stuff. You can kind of let go of second guessing where you're putting your lines or anything, because you've already figured it out with the grid system, and so in my opinion, it allows for more play with the material, and at least that's what I've experienced with this sort of setup. So I will continue to keep doing this, and I will teach in this way because, like I said, I believe set yourself up for success, and give yourself some freedom for play in the best, in whatever way you can, you know. And so in this gridding, I think gives you a lot of play and freedom, when you don't have to guess and go back and forth and figure out like, oh, did I put that in the right spot? Like, because you know, you matched it on the grid, you've got your solid background, and as we're going to put some paint to fill it in a little more, you'll see how it can be messy and expressive and playful, and then we hone it in over time to get the right balance, you know, referring back to our reference image. But yeah, with just having it figured out with your grid, that's a great support for you to relax into your piece. So we'll go back into the image that I'm using, my reference image here. Just going to point out some things of what I see, how my brain takes this reference image and how I'm going to play with it on the canvas. I paint intuitively. I've been doing this for a few years now, and I've learned along the way of what works for my brain and my hands, and connecting, you know, how I process the image and informing my body how to make that work in a way that feels intuitive, in a way that feels comfortable for my mind's eye and my physical eyes, and just how it flows well with my hands. So what do I mean by that is I see shadows here. I see like a pretty dark blackish green with a little bit of some light, like, you know, this is the bottom shadow of the background of that plant, and then the light is hitting the top. There's more light. And, you know, sometimes, you know, when I'm observing my reference image, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have fun with that. Like right now I'm seeing light refractors of the top. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be fun when I just kind of point it in, right? That pointillism sort of style of painting. That's gonna be fun. And now I'm seeing that this, from this line, you know, the grass that the dog is sitting on, this over here is pretty solid green. I don't see too much shadow, but down here, what's giving it this beautiful contrast and like perspective is that we do see the dirt and shadow underneath. So what I'm going to do is lay out the background a little bit. And sometimes I don't always start with the background, but because it's I'm using the actual background, I want to, for the grounding reason of grounding the image, I'm going to work on that first. And so I'm going to do a wash of like dark, the darkness here, black mostly, with maybe a little bit of green. I'm going to break this part up with like a mid-tone green. I'm not going to go super with the lighter bits because I personally like to start with the darker shades first and then put the lightest colors on top. I find that that works really well with acrylic. You can go bold with the dark. You know, you'll see as I'm going to do all of this basically black, right? And as we can see in the reference image, there's a lot of green there, but to get that beautiful contrast with the green, instead of going like in and out with black and trying to figure out like all of that lines, which is exhausting for my eyes to figure that out. It's just easier for me to blend a bunch of black there. And then I'm probably going to do like a mid-tone green to do the grassy bits there, and then an even brighter green above that once that dries, and then maybe even just like a greenish white for just those accents. And that's how I work with layering in general. We're going to do something similar with the coat. I'm going to start with the black and then pull on the lighter grays And at the end is when I put those like beautiful little fine white lines, and the whiskers and all that cool stuff that happens with the coat. So let's go back to the canvas here. And I just wanted to talk about how I break down, kind of starting the image too. There's some really cool stuff happening in the eye where we can see the reflection of the owner, and I'm gonna totally go for that. I have some really fine line brushes. I did not put too much detail of that in my sketch. The reason being is when I sketch on gesso, I find that it smears a lot and sometimes it muddles with the paint. So sometimes in my sketch, I try to do as minimal pencil work. And it's a process of trusting myself that I can do it with the paint. And since it's a small piece, I think if I make little mistakes here and there, I'm fine with like adjusting it, which we'll probably see in some of my paintings where I'm like, oh, I put the line there, but then I kind of soften the edges or move it around in the ways that I do. It takes time, but I prefer to do it that way because I have penciled all the details in the past, and then it just gets so confusing when it all gets muddled in for me. So I just put the shape of the eye that I want, and like where like my darkest black that I'm gonna put to break that line. But as far as like the image of the person, I'm gonna do that with the paint in the layers that I work with. Okay, so we're gonna go back here to the painting, and I'm going to work with my paint. I enjoy working with Mars Black. I got into painting. I actually had like hand-me-down paints from years ago from my brother, who's also an artist. He used to do other kinds of paintings, but he's more into digital art or pencil work too. And so some of these brands I just kind of got introduced to, and I kind of feel good about them because they were old and they're holding up. Well, the ones that I've used, I've already used them all up and bought newer ones. But like Golden Acrylic's been great. Liquid Text has been great. I'm now playing more with the Blick Artists first series. And I try to go for the heavier, more opaque paint, heavy body acrylic, because I could always dilute it. I work with water. I'm somewhat of an amateur painter in that, like, I've learned a little bit when I was in like high school in the art class, and have just been playing with the material over the years, but it's specifically over the last 3 years I really just continue to paint and paint and paint. I feel like acrylics work really well with me because I can layer, it dries quickly, and it does shift in color here and there, which can be a challenging thing, but like sometimes just painting it on a little piece of scrap paper can help me see how it will, oxidize and dry over time, and I can make adjustments here or there. And I also just accept that it's a painting and it's my vision, so it doesn't have to be an exact copy of the photograph that I'm referencing, because it's really the energy that we put into our paintings after all. So yes, I'm going to be working with, I put some Mars Black, and I'm going to work with, I think for this we're going to do the phthalo green, the blue shade green, and maybe a little bit of yellow, maybe not yet the yellow, to brighten up the green, because like I said before, we're just kind of blocking out the shadow. Oh, I will do a little bit of yellow because of the highlight that's happening in the corner. I do want that contrast. I'm going to do cadmium yellow dark, just a little bit of that. And then for these, this process is going to be almost like paint sketching. It's going to be kind of sloppy. This isn't a super fine detail. I mean, I do want them to be blocking the right sections, but they're not going to be, they're going to cover in a little bit of my edges. Because I will like, I like to kind of cover in the main subject with my background, and then go over that background when I start filling in the main subject, and then it kind of fills out that space, and you get those nice edges where I don't have to worry about going back in too much to cover up the green or cover up the white of the canvas or stuff like that. And as far as brushes, I think everyone has their preference, the tools that they like to work with. I'm not the best at maintaining brushes, but I also find that by making that mistake of not taking super care of all my brushes, that I end up like creating these beautiful textures with my like broken up brushes. So I don't waste anything. If I have to buy a new brush to fill up the space, it's totally fine. But with my other broken up brushes, they're still very useful and unique actually sometimes to what I need. So that would be my also, I guess, tip is if you find that you have some brushes that are not well taken care of, still play with them, you know, and see what kind of textures you get from them, because they could be helpful to get that right kind of first stroke or bushy pixelation thing that's going on in an image or stuff like that. So it's always fun to work with our mistakes and grow. And I'm trying to figure out kind of what brushes I want to really work with. My usual one I seem to have misplaced. So I think this one, for these sort of bigger pieces, I might use this one. Yeah, and it's going to be kind of abstract a little and loose. I'll use these big ones to just get all that space filled up. And I do use a range of brushes for all of my pieces. I have some thicker ones to do those broad strokes, and then I have some like teeny tiny fine line stuff to go in all the details, and it's my jam. I like to do it all. Okay, so we're gonna start with the black here. I like to wet my brushes. I like to have a little spot in my palette that has water kind of puddled there, because acrylic can dry really fast. Sometimes even just going to the jar, it's already starting to dry. So or I'll have like, I call them like tinted waters. So if I'm working with an image and I have like white, pure white paint, and then I'll have like a little pool of a tinted yellow, and that's to warm my paint or to put a wash of something. I'm not sure if that'll happen, because sometimes that just happens to fix mistakes, like, oh, I put too much of this one color, I need to warm it up. Or sometimes I do it on purpose, where I have that in mind of like tinting a spot. But that's a way I like to work, is have like a little bit of water, maybe even like tinted water, to adjust my colors and kind of have everything close by, because I tend to be that person that has just like, oh, just a little dash of this and this and this and that, and smear it all around. And I seem to make it work on my little round one. But there's different size palettes, and I know there's sheets. I find that the paint dries really fast on the sheets. On these plastic ones, it holds up a little better. I haven't played with maybe like a mirror ceramic, but you know, whatever you have around, feel free to try and see if that works for you. So now I'm gonna kind of make more of like a blackish green. Probably mostly black, because it's just, because this is the beginning stage, because I'm working on like areas that have a really strong contrast. And if I go darker, if I do go black, and then I put the green branches or flicks of grass on top, it just has that better contrast, that better pop. So it's okay to go a little more opaque or darker in this stage, because you can always layer with acrylic. So if you have that in mind, that you're doing something where you're going to be layering anyways, then it's okay to go a little darker or heavier with your bottom layer. So I'm seeing, if I turn this over back to the original image, that I'm seeing that like a lot of this darkness is like kind of high up. So I'm going to follow that edge and then probably do the lighter greeny one up there. Yeah, because I can always like soften the edges when I start to paint in the branches later on. So let's go here with the dark, and then I did a little line there where the actual grass. Go around the nose. And I did sketch like some cool eyebrow fur that was happening, but I'm going to go ahead and cover it because I can always go back and cover that in with, or get that nice contrast when I put in the white whiskers and fur that's popping there. Yeah, there's going to be stages where the painting is like, can look a little scary or off, or like, oh, I really did that, didn't I? Just put like a bunch of black, even though I only see little pieces of it in my reference image. You just gotta trust the process, and always remember you can layer. You're layering with acrylic, so you'll be covering it up again with more colors and bringing that beautiful green back. And sometimes as I'm painting and I'm running out of pigment on my brush, that's another thing to use as you're painting. You don't have to like mix with white to soften the edges. I might need to do a couple of layers. Sometimes I can get it bold with just one pass, but most of the times it takes a couple layers. There's this like hesitation to commit sometimes, and I think all artists kind of have that. So I don't think there's anything wrong with like taking it easy if you haven't painted a while. If you feel low energy and not feeling very confident, it's valid. You don't have to go super bold. Ease your way into the painting. I got back into painting as my form of therapy, grief therapy. I had lost my dog to cancer, and my heart was broken, and I used painting and art making as a way to like come back to a nurturing space for myself and for my dog. So when I would sit down and paint him, I would kind of meditate over the memories that we had, and just wanting to be tender with him again. And he wasn't around, but I took that tenderness and applied it towards how I was creating my piece. And I still do that. I think it's important for me, and I think it's important for a lot of creative people to be kind to themselves. and be kind to their work, even if their work can be like heavy. You know, some people have strong emotions with what they're creating, and that's, I still think we can be patient and loving towards ourselves and our work. Whether people are painting professionally, or as entrepreneurs, trying to make it into this world with their creativity, or people who are painting in the privacy of their own home and don't want to share it to anyone. It should still be done with patience and kindness towards ourselves, because we're pulling something from us, we're birthing something from us every time we come to the canvas. So nurturing energy is important, in my opinion. So this is the little brighter color there of that grass. So I didn't notice much shadowing under the grass that was happening, like in the other spots of the painting. And with that sort of like tinted water that I have now, I made like a mid-tone dark light green and that sort of black green. And put in some of that in the shadow, because it gets a little darker closer to the dog. It's a lot of nuances in the lighting, and I think people, if you sit with your image and observe, like, what do you notice? That could be another thing too. It's like, if you don't want to start the painting yet, you can just notice the image and kind of study it. What do you see? What, like, as far as like, what do you see with the lighting? What do you see happening there? Where is it brighter? Where is it darker? Or another thing that I think I do automatically now, but it's a good thing for me to like share, is like, if I'm looking at my reference image, and for instance, like, because maybe that's how I paint as well, actually. If I'm making a color, I try to see, well, where else can I use this color? Where am I seeing this color in the image? And put it there. And maybe, I think this is with practice. Practice of like understanding what we're looking at, and then also like, as we're working on the piece, what like I said, where else can I use this color on the canvas. So already you can see I'm like covering over those edges of the black, which is fine. And this was super loose, nothing super, but it's already kind of grounding the image, it's already, I think there's like something to when we start, right, and we do these sort of things, it gives you a little bit more confidence. You're gonna feel a little more like, oh, it's not a full blank canvas anymore. I'm filling it up. And you're filling it up with like useful color blocking, because this is informing you, where the shadows are going to be in the highlights. And there's like even a little bit of dirt popping through there too. This is actually gets covered by the fur, but sometimes I'll still put that there. Yeah, and so we'll let that dry and figure out what the next step will be in for the grass later on. But I think right now we'll also work on the dog. So when I break down the dog, let me take it over here. There's a couple things that I'm noticing for the dog. The shadows here are cooler tone. When I see cooler tone, I see it more blue based. So I see a blue based white here. Around here, it's quite bright white, pure white. Maybe a little yellowy white here. A little yellowy white there. And then again, back to the cool toned blue based white. And then sort of warm white there. So especially with white, I find it's hard to get good contrast if you just go in with white and then try to add the blue underneath or whatever, try to break it up that way. I've similar to with the grass, I would do like the darkest color that I see in this area kind of all around, which is like almost like a blue gray, very pale blue gray, more on the blue side. I would wash all of that. I would just put like a layer all around there, and then when I get to the point where I'm ready to put in the true bright white, I'll put it strategically where, you know, in the center bit, so that you still get that sort of curvature that happens where it's like it's a rounded limb, right? So what the highest point of the light is going to have the brightest, and then you'll have shadows and shading on the other edges to show the roundness. And so probably we'll do something similar here, where I'll put a wash of a yellowy white, and then maybe stick to bright white here. I think actually I'll probably do more of like the brown that's underneath, and then just go with like a really fine brush to fill in the white there. So I might not do much white there, so you'll see it probably be dark for the longest bit until I'm ready to put in my lighter layers. And then here I think I'm just gonna do all of that, like, well, the darkest, like black at the darkest point, and then like a dark gray on the higher points. We'll do a little bit of that so you can see what I'm talking about. So for that I'll need a couple of different colors. Let's see, so I think I'm gonna do cerulean blue, because it just seems like the right kind of blue to put in with the white and gray. And I use titanium white, heavy body acrylic for my actual white. Oops, I apologize. I'm gonna get that with my spatula. I have a tub of it. And I'm probably gonna do like some layers of the black fur, but I'm not gonna go quite in yet with the brown, so I want to kind of study the image just a little more. So we'll do this for now. And I'm gonna do, I think I'll use like this sort of shape brush to, yeah, get those areas. So we'll get back to black. And if you can get clean water, that can help ease any frustrations. I'm not gonna get it right now. Put a little bit of white. Okay, so I'll show here. I got black, just the black with a little bit of water, and then I put black with just like a little dot of white. And I'm gonna start with the black first. And I'm gonna work with these two colors as they are wet. Put a little more water. But I'm gonna do it quite, oh, and I'm omitting the leash, the red leash and a harness. I'm just gonna paint the dog. Okay. And I'm gonna do this somewhat opaque. I'll go with the darkest part first. And right now I'm noticing in my reference image that I might have gone more into the white that's happening around the mouth, and that's okay, because I could always pull it out. If anything, I'm okay. I might on purpose go in. And what I mean by that is I will turn this here. Is that there's like some white highlight fur that's happening here, and I'm kind of going, might be cutting into it a little more with the black. But like here, I'm kind of doing it on purpose because I don't want to go back in to each stroke with black. I would rather just go at really close and then pull out the white and then do the white like whiskers at the end. And I feel like it just paints, it's more clean, a clean paint job. Yep. And then going into the fur, and sometimes like I'm noticing that the black kind of is looking like it's blending in with the darkness of the grass. So if I need to make it a little lighter or make that part a little lighter, I might be able to see the, because in person I can see that that's more green and that's true black. But sometimes you know, help yourself, help your eyes out if you're like, oh my god, it looks all the same, and find a way to like brighten the edge, and then you can always go back in and fix that once you're ready for that next stage. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with the charcoaly gray. And it's a little watery. I prefer it to be more opaque because I don't want it to be too drippy. This is going to show like that lighter gray part that's popping. And I like to do that where I'll put like the dark in the darkest part and then the mid-tone gray, all like, I won't paint it all black and then put mid-tone gray, because this kind of already is showing me like where is like the depth and the highlight. And I just prefer to work that way. Depth here, and I might need to go just like back and forth, and when it's wet it's totally fine. Here's some stuff happening. And over here I'm noticing even lighter gray, so I'm going to go ahead and just do that, the lighter gray. And black. Now it was like, oh, just like a wash of paint that I had on my brush, and I'm just like lightly using the rest of that, almost like as if it's watercolor, just to like use that softness, tone, and opacity too. It's quite bit of a wash, and it's working really well to kind of show these like tonal differences of what's happening with the fur. And then I can go back in with a thicker paint to break that up a little better. So it's gonna look a little I guess loose before we tighten it up. If you ever find that like you put too much water in your paint, sometimes I'll like dab the excess on a paper towel. I'm gonna kind of put in the darker fur shadow that was happening here. And I didn't do that yet. I'll probably get closer to this where I go in with like a fine line black and put in